Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Fransgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc.
Today's topic is freeze your credit and freeze your property title. Question for the audience: what if someone could steal your property title without you even knowing? How do you stop that from happening? That's what Curt Moore is going to be talking to us about today. Curt is the founder and president of Moat Title Security, a company dedicated to protecting homeowners from title identity theft through copyrighted legal documents and locally licensed agents. After earning his degree in business administration and marketing from the University of Northern Colorado in 1991, Curt spent 3 decades in the energy industry, specializing in land management and governmental affairs. In 2021, he retired from that sector to focus full-time on Moat, a venture rooted in his commitment to customer service, community impact, and real protection for homeowners, one title at a time. Curt, welcome, sir. And do you have a favorite quote or saying?
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it, Bernie. I appreciate it, Wayne. I do have a saying that I've lived by for quite a long time. I learned the value of hard work simply by working hard. And I think that has worked for me very well throughout my career. People ask me, who's your hero? And I'm just pleased to be on your podcast today and talk about Moat and answer any questions you have.
Curt, I'm getting a hollow echo in your sound bite. So I don't know. What led you to come into the space of title insurance and energy sector? They're a little bit different. What made you pick this path?
Yeah, that's a great question. All the way back in 2014, when I was working in Colorado in the oil and gas industry, my mother, getting elderly, actually had an experience with someone attempting to fraudulently take the title to her home. That was my first experience with that. We were able to stop that, but it did open my eyes to the risks, and it certainly showed me that the focus on these fraudsters is, in my mind, it's clearly upon elderly homeowners that are more vulnerable. So that's how I got the idea all the way back then. It's kind of been brewing in 2021 when I retired. I think I'm going to do something like building legal documents, copyright, and incorporated the company, acquired trademarks and wordmarks for the company. And we're pretty early on launching a company. We intend to be in all 50 states, and currently we're in 8 states and plugging along to get in the other 42. So it's a background.
So why is title insurance an unheard of or an unthought of fraud?
It's a great question. I've had 6 different properties in my adult life. So I've gone with 6 closings where I've sold or purchased property. You don't really have a lot of opportunity to understand what exactly is happening there. When you're purchasing or selling property, you generally just show up to a closing, you sign a bunch of papers, someone gets a check, someone else gets keys and a garage door opener, and you go your separate ways and you're done. You walk out of there with a ton of paper and you don't really know what to do with it. So you put it in a desk drawer somewhere and never look at it again. What I think is becoming more and more prevalent in our current world of folks that are just misbehaving and being ornery is attacking property titles becoming the same. It happened to my mom all the way back to 14, but I believe it's becoming more and more prevalent. And the art of that is something that is just, again, it's just becoming something that fraudsters are focusing on as a means of attacking consumers and trying to steal from them.
Just so I'm in the right ballpark, I understand, and I could be wrong, but my understanding, the American model versus the Canadian model is the American model actually title insurers, where we actually get a hold of lawyers and go back with dead trees to who owned what when. And I've been told that in the American model, it's about insurance, not about the other.
How it works here in the United States, if I'm selling my property and I get into a contract with the buyer, we're going to elect to have a local title company perform the tasks of preparing all the paperwork and conducting the closing. That title company is going to go back in title all the way back to when the property came out from a patent, generally in the United States, all the way back, looking for defects or unreleased tax lien or unreleased mortgages. They want to go to that closing and provide clear title to the buyer from the seller. And then they also put insurance on top of that, an insurance policy that says, hey, look, we've reviewed the title. We're comfortable that we've scheduled any lingering easements for pipelines or utility corridors. But we're ensuring that we didn't miss a critical document in the public record, such as a release tax lien or a claim from a contractor or mechanic's lien that ensures the buyer from the date of closing back. So if anything comes forward after they bought the property that they missed, that's what the insurance is for. It generally does not provide relief for something that happens post-closing. There are some title companies that offer some insurance forward. That's a new thing. It's not very common. So that's how it generally works here in the United States. And that's invariably what's going to happen when you go to a closing, whether you're a buyer or seller. The property has been considered in the public record. Title is confirmed to be cleared to convey.
One of the things that I've heard in the province of Ontario, when you're doing the title insurance, is that everything is in compliance. Are there any lien? And are you the owner of the property, et cetera? Also, if you put up a structure or let's say, or it's multi-unit residential place, that the local bureaucracy has ordained it, yes, that's a 6-unit multi-unit residential versus 5 or 4. Is that also part of what title insurance covers in your space too?
Certainly, that's a great question. And I'm glad you brought that up. That is part of the title process for closing as well. If it's a residential property, R1 zoning, single family dwelling, and they are going to confirm that there's not a zoning, something out of balance with the zoning, then they do perform old cut surveys just to make sure the lot has not been encroached on by a fence or another structure. If they do find that there's an outbuilding, that will confirm that there is a permit for that to be constructed. To answer your question, yes.
So no surprises like a Jimmy Hoffa buried in concrete underneath your basement?
Each property is unique, and title companies, there's a handful of title companies that are national in scale here in the United States. And then there's regional title companies that often use those larger companies as their underwriters. And they go all the way down to local title companies operating in a smaller metro area. Whether national, regional, or local, I think they're all very good at reviewing the property that's public records and making sure there's nothing awry relative to compliance codes and things of that nature.
So what differentiates Moat from traditional title insurance?
Great question. Moat is all about, first off, Moat is not insurance. If something bad happens, you can file a claim and we'll process the claim. Title insurance, again, everyone's going to walk out of a closing. One party is going to walk out of a closing. The new owner of the property is going to walk out of that closing with a title policy. And again, that title policy is very useful. Yeah, there are times when things are missed. We missed that these minerals were leased. You probably made a decision to purchase this property believing that you were getting minerals to the property. It turns out that you didn't. We missed. That would be a claim that you would put against that title policy because it's something that happened before closing. So that's what title insurance is for. But title insurance from a title company is generally not doing anything for future claims. If you close on January 1st of 2025 and something happens later in 225 or 226 or 227 or somewhere out in the future, that title policy is not your cure for that. That title policy is looking behind the closing date, not in front of the closing date. So what Moat does to differentiate ourselves from that is we're looking at protecting property owners from fraud post-closing. Our flagship document for that, Ernie and Wayne, is what we call the notice title freeze. We built that document to function very similarly to a credit freeze. If you're familiar with what credit freeze does, consumer markets, at least in the United States, a credit freeze will essentially say anyone that wants to take out a loan or apply for credit, you're going to have one of the agencies interact with the potential lender or the creditor, and they're going to want to research your credit history and assess you as a risk. If you've frozen your credit, that stops. They can't do it. And that loan application or that credit application will just grind to a halt. And it's just not going to get processed. So I'm a big believer in the credit freeze process. frozen my credit, my wife's frozen her credit, and encourage really anyone in my family, friend network to do just that. It's a pretty simple thing to do to protect yourself from future risks in your consumer credit model. So we built our notice of title freeze to do similar functions. Title freeze against who's concerned about title fraud. I'm concerned about fraudulent recording. So I'm just going to freeze my title, and I'm recording this document to do just that. And no recording should be valid and legitimate unless I first record a release of that title freeze. And if anything's recorded without that release, my express recorded consent in the form of a release, it's fraud. And we believe that is pretty similar to what a credit freeze can do. In the United States, there's 3 agencies that live in that space. And there's literally thousands of clerk and recording offices in the parishes and counties, boroughs of the United States. It can't be done in just 3 spots. It has to be done specifically where the public records are kept, where the property is located. So it's a little more difficult. When our clients have their title frozen in the public records, that's where fraud starts. If someone's going to attack Curt Moore's property, they're going to snoop around in the public records to get familiar with how he came into title and the legal description of the property. And they're going to do a fraudulent deed based on what they see in the public records. By placing that notice of title freeze in the public record, that's our first level of defense. It's a deterrence. If they're considering attacking my property, they're going to see that I froze my title. And more than likely, that's enough of a deterrence that they're going to move on and seek a different target. So that's the first win. But if they miss it, or if they don't understand it, or they just said they don't care and they file a fraudulent deed, our view is our clients will be in a much better position to extinguish the fraudulent deed is recorded. You're going to have cleared up, and hopefully you can clear that up before they catalyze that attack with placing mortgages on the property and stirring up all kinds of other troubles. That's what our flagship document is designed to do. Pretty excited about that. That's a proactive approach to deterring and protecting property owners from title fraud. And I think we're on a very good path of getting that. It's a brand new product, getting that introduced into a market on a national scale is a bit of a heavy lift, but we believe that based on where we are so far, when people understand, what is the risk and how does that work? The average property owner is just not all that familiar with how it even works when it's working right, let alone when it's working wrong. We're excited that our products are going to be well received in the market once we get them out in front of people and educate people and show them the value of what we're trying to do.
Curt, when you're applying the title insurance, do you find that you're more vulnerable if you don't have a mortgage on your property? Because if it's worth $10 and you've borrowed 8, you can't borrow another 8 on top of that because it has a certain value, right? So if there's already a mortgage on the property, would that also stave off anybody from trying to basically pretend to be you?
Beverly, that's a great question. In my experience, if I'm a bad guy, I would definitely lean into unburdened properties. And just for the reason it was the case with my mother back in 2014, she had a mortgage on the property. I think that probably stood it up taller in the eyes of the fraudster to make an attack or seek to make an attack. And you're right. I'll change the numbers a little bit. If there's $1 million property out there without a mortgage, that's pretty low hanging fruit compared to $1 million property that has an $800,000 mortgage on it. Trying to record another mortgage on that is going to be more difficult than if it didn't have any existing mortgage burdens on it in the first place. So I think fraudsters are always going to look for easy paths to catalyze their attack. On our website, where we try to explain the risk and show some news articles, it's definitely a thing that unburdened properties are probably going to be higher targets just because they offer bigger wins for fraudsters.
What is a notice of occupation?
Notice of occupancy, property title. Our second line is the notice of occupancy, and that's all about protecting property owners from unauthorized occupancy, which at least in the States, that's also referred to as squatters. Maybe it's been catalyzed more since the COVID-19 years. I'm not sure. We've got any number of articles on our website indicating people out there that just say, hey, look, I'm going to target this property. I'm going to move in on it, and I'm going to change the lots. I'm going to put the utilities in my name. I'm going to do all these things and claim that I have a right to be there. Property owner sees that that attack has been made. They've got a lot of work to do. Generally, they'll contact the local authorities. They'll say, hey, look, the property owner says you shouldn't be here. And they want me to be eviction notice, essentially. And squatter will just say, hey, no, I got a lease. And they'll make up a story. They'll say, the property owner and I have a verbal agreement. They said I could be in here for this reason or that. I was going to do some work and I could live in here while I was updating the kitchen or whatever. They've always got a story, which if you think about local authorities, they're all about crime. Yeah, they're all about code. We'll spin that story off to make it not clear that there was a crime, and they'll steer it into a civil type thing. The property owner says you don't belong here. The fake tenant says I do, and someone's going to have to take that to court and have a judge sort out who's right and who's wrong. Meanwhile, if someone's in your property, they're not taking good care of it, probably destroying it, probably subletting it to other suspicious characters. It can take months, depending on where the property is located in the court system's view of tenancy, to restore the property owner's rightful possession of property. In the meantime, tens of thousands of dollars of damage. And when we finally do get them out of there, they're not going to pay for the damage they've done. And you've been harmed. Our view on that is similar to what we do at the notice of title freeze. We record a notice of occupancy, which essentially says, hey, we own this property. I have no intent of anyone else occupying my property. If I do have intent of someone other than myself occupying this property, I will record a notice of property lease, and that will be the only party that has a right to be in and occupying my property. Anybody else discovered in my property without being identified as part of a recorded notice of property lease is a squatter. And I reserve the right to have my permission to enter and occupy the property. So we're pretty excited about that document as well. We think it has a lot of applicability in a lot of the major metro markets where this is becoming more and more problem. If you think about where my wife and I, we sleep here every night, here most every, except for on vacation, we're always here. So that's not a property that's a high target for a squatter, but we also own some rental property. Those are high property. And if you think about people that in the United States, I might live in New Jersey during the summer and in Florida during the winter. At any given time, 4, 5, 6 months of the year, one of those properties is unoccupied. Those are high targets for squatters. So those are some of the areas where we're getting a lot of good traction with that notice of occupancy.
In commercial property, is this process the same as a lease, or are they different? Where does a commercial lease fit into title insurance?
That's a great question. Our product lines are mostly positioned towards residential property owners, but it certainly applies in commercial properties as well. The process is very similar. Commercial property transactions are more complex just because the nature of property is more complex. But at the end of the day, they're going to have a closing. It may not be closed at a traditional title office. Usually the two parties are pretty sophisticated and they do their own due diligence on both sides, the buyer and having an attorney inside the company or a hired attorney research the records and make sure that when I buy this, I'm not going to buy somebody else's problems and unreleased mortgages and tax liens. At the end of the day, there's going to be a purchase and sale agreement in a commercial transaction, and there's going to be a closing probably outside of the title company. One party is going to record a deed conveying ownership from the prior owner to a new owner. That's very important if you want to mortgage your property, leverage your property. Any lender is going to want to see that you have, I think the applicability is mostly for the Moat products is positioned towards residential owners of property, but it certainly applies to commercial properties as well. I don't think squatters are as prevalent against commercial properties as they are against more residential properties. It certainly could be the case where they are going to make attacks against commercial properties through title fraud. We'll just have to see.
Are you finding that because you're across the U.S. right now, or different parts of the U.S., correct?
We're in 8 states right now. We're working as hard as we can to get in the other 42 states. Notice the title treats, it's a brand new document. We've copyrighted it. I imagine at some level it will be copied enough without penetrating our protection of the copyright. What we need to do, Bernie, on a state-by-state basis is look at the state statutes and consider our document resting in their public records and making sure that it's not going to cause any ambiguity with any state statute as it relates to things like public records, recording, title, fraud. We're in 8 states so far. 2 states, again, causing some ambiguity as to what are the state statutes trying to protect against versus what is our protecting against. So we sync up. But hopefully we're working as hard as we can on a state-by-state basis to get our documents synced up. Our goal is within the next 12 months, we'll be in all 50 states.
Are you finding, though, that between the different states where you're either having the title insurance or notice of occupancy, are there different types of fraud risks that are unique to a certain region? Or is it universal?
That's a good question. But, what our development plan is certainly focused on states where there's a high demographic position of elderly property owners. That's a demographic that is clearly a target. So those two things line up. So to answer your question, is it different in Minnesota versus Florida for how this is done? I would say no. The concept of someone who has bad wiring and they just are a thief and a criminal by design, they're not really going to care if they're attacking the property in St. Paul versus Orlando. To answer your question, I really don't think anywhere in the United States is safer than somewhere else. I think it's generally pretty similar. It's important to note on that a little bit here. When I record a fraudulent deed, say someone, John Doe owns a piece of property and say Curt Moore's bad guy, and I'm targeting John Doe's property. First off, I'm not going to record the deed from John Doe to Curt Moore. I'm going to have stolen somebody else's identity too. These guys are 3-dimensional bad guys. I've stolen someone's identity that's a good credit, upstanding citizen. It's not a bad guy. I'm going to take that fraudulent deed from the legitimate owner, John Doe, and place it into the stolen identity. And just by doing that, I haven't made any money. That's just the bridge to making money. The way I make money is I'm going to quickly try to either put a mortgage or multiple mortgages against the property in the name of the party that I've stolen their identity and take out capital as quick as I can, or someone sniffs it out and sees there's something wrong and stops it. The other thing they can do, and it aligns with what we're saying, is the differences. They can say, hey, I recorded this document from the legitimate owner, John Doe, to this stolen identity party, and I'm going to list the property for sale. I bought this property. I really wanted to move in. I just got transferred overseas. I need to sell this. So I'm just going to put it up for auction and highest and best bids by Friday at noon, and all kinds of things that would make it feel legitimate. The buyer, the accepted contract, that buyer can choose the title company. They can have a right to inspect. If they can point out deficiencies in the property that are greater than $500, that can be deducted from the purchase price. So it makes it sound really legitimate. But the hook is they'll say, I don't want to get into contract and then have the buyer perhaps not perform or walk away. And these poor folks that are looking at these properties, and they've been hunting for a property in this neighborhood, and here one pops up, they're all excited and they want to get their best bid. If the property is $1 million, 5% of $1 million is $50,000. So maybe 5 or 10 people write a check for $50,000 to this fraudulently harmed property, and that's where they get their money. And think of all the parties that have been harmed. The legitimate property owners got huge mess to clean up. The stolen identity guy that was used as the middleman, it's got a huge problem. It's probably got 5 or 10 people suing. And then you've got all the people that wrote checks. They're trying to find it not. So in that circumstance, probably a dozen or more people have been harmed, and there's only one bad guy out there tending to be someone and doing all these terrible things. And they were able to take a bunch of other people's money. It's a vicious game. We've worked very hard to design our products to just stop it before it starts. And then if it starts to get traction, we want to give property owners the best, strongest recourse by taking our documents to the local authorities and the courts if necessary to stop it, A to Z.
Tell me, Curt, when you have a title insurance company, does that work instead of a lawyer? Does lawyers come along? Where do they line up?
Again, that's a great question. And again, title insurance companies are all about ensuring that the title at closing was clear, and anything that wasn't clear was scheduled on an exhibit that says this property is conveying, bringing along these easements along the back of the lot. There's a 10-foot strip back there that you can't plant trees on, and you can't do anything on because there's electrical and gas lines back there. They will schedule the things encumbering the property, but at the end of the day, they're going to say you are receiving clear title inside the boundaries of survey, and there's no mortgages. You're getting clear title subject to the scheduled encumbrances. But again, Wayne, their insurance stops at closing, and it's only insuring behind the closing date. So if anything that happens after the closing date, that insurance policy is not providing any protection to the new property. Does that make sense?
To launch this whole process, and you've talked about you're in 8 states now, and then every state you're looking to get into, you have to understand the legislation that governs that location. How much effort? So I've built a system that basically does a credit check to make sure that it's not so much credit, but as opposed to ownership, proof of ownership. How hard was it for you to assemble the construct and then find someone to say, okay, what are we going to do next? How do I build it? You have a general idea, then you have to do a kind of a proof of concept. And once you have the proof of concept and legislation goes, yes, check mark. Now so the lenders or whoever applies for this, how do they know it's solid? I believe you that it's solid, but how do they know it's solid? If they've never heard about this before, how does that all connect? That part of the story is also really cool too.
There's a lot going on in that question.
Sure.
So let me kind of answer that piece by piece. You're right that there's an idea. I think any entrepreneur, any business that moves forward into some level of development, it all starts with, I've got an idea. Now, is there a reason why people would need Banjo? Or is there a reason why people would want to have a website where they could build a friend network and share their experiences and photos and do some things? Is there any reason to make any money doing that? Would people advertise with us because of our network of people around something like that? Everything always starts with an idea. And Moat certainly started with an idea. It was catalyzed by my personal experience with my mother. My background, you said it earlier, it's not a direct knowledge, but I spent 30 years engaging in contracts and recorded documents and transactions and closings, and I'm very familiar with how public records work. Property is conveyed from one party to another. My idea blossomed from what if to how when I built the documents and did that with a legal team, and that probably took months. And there's a lot of back and forth to make something that's never been made before and get it to a place where it says what it needs to say, it doesn't need to say. And copyright office, that takes a year. If you apply for something today, you can expect later this year, around the 4th quarter, is when you'd actually get copyright completed. You can claim copyright as soon as you have it and apply for it, but you're going to be a lot stronger, in my opinion, when you actually have it approved and in the register of the office. And then next steps, you're going to have to build a business. We're a Delaware corporation. We build a website. We've got a CRM attached to the website to process the customer relations management. On one hand, it's easy to say, well, that's a great idea. I'm sure it'll just go crazy as soon as I get it out there. It just takes a ton of time and effort and capital to move it from notch to notch to where we are now. I would still say we're a pretty early stage startup in our development plan. We've achieved 8 states. We are operational in 8 states. You bring up a great point, and we get this from time to time. This sounds cool, but who are you? And I don't really know that much about you. I'm reading about you on your website. But are you really legitimate? And believe true, cool, warm, ready to buy? It's a process. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's an expensive endeavor to, in my opinion, to build something that intends to be in 50 states. When all 50 states have to be licensed in those states. I'm not trying to depress anyone here, but I would want people considering an entrepreneurial venture to go into that with their eyes wide open and consider all of the challenges that are going to come before you, so you don't get 2 or 3 notches in and realize the 4th notch is insurmountable. or not just 5, 6, and 7 is going to require capital that you don't have access to. It can be pretty humbling and frustrating. Great question. Yeah, to hit on that.
Did you find, though, in the process, and kudos to you for getting it up and running, as only for the fact that anytime you're launching something new that involves regulatory bodies, right? Did you find that you had to pair up either with law societies, like here in Ontario, it's the Upper Canada Law Society, and or lending institutions? I could see them capitalizing on this as a good tool. Did you leverage those connections?
We are in the process. I serve team representation both in Colorado and in Oklahoma. That between the two of those firms, they have connectivity throughout the different states. So I'm comfortable that what we're doing as we grow out in the remaining 42 states, we'll get that right. You're touching on something important. We certainly have a business model, and that's all about marketing, direct marketing to consumers. Our view is different than what I would say our primary competitors do. I'm not a big fan of 1-800 numbers, chat robots. Our view is to place agents in local areas, so Orlando and Tampa Bay, and those agents be a local representative. Anyone that contacts Moat becomes a client of Moat. They're going to have one person to talk to. They're going to have their phone number and email, and they're not going to have to go back later on if they want to change something or add something and go through a 1-800 number or be directed to a chat robot to try to change their status. So you have a different customer service model, and I think that's going to appeal. It certainly would appeal to my elderly mother. Would not have done well with chat robots and 1-800 numbers. She would just want to talk to somebody and talk to the same person anytime she wants to talk to things. But that's the consumer model. To get back to your question, we do have a business to business model, and that's all about integrating with title companies, property management companies, and real estate professionals. These are people that are on the front line of buying and selling property. I think the big win for Moat someday down the line will be, it just became common when you purchase property, freeze the title, because you're probably not going to do anything immediately after that, 3 years, maybe until the next time you sell a property. So don't buy that for free. You've got that protection. That title company that did the closing, that one of the documents signed right there at the table when you acquired the property, you froze your title, that got recorded. Day one, you've got protection against fraud. And then the benefit of the title company is, if you're familiar with how, but in my experience, when you go to a closing, you didn't have really any in choosing, was it this company or that, either a lender or a realtor. The next time I need to transact, I'm going to go back to that same, it's part of the closing. I'm going to need to release my auto freeze. So it's building linkages to other businesses in the near markets. So title companies, property management companies, and real estate agents, we definitely have a business to business model build out along those lines, in addition to our direct marketing to consumers.
How do we get a hold of you?
I'll go directly to moattitlesecurity.com. You can reach out. There's a phone number there. There's an address there. There's info at Moat Title Security. I'm keep my finger on the pulse of all the inbounds from people that have questions and concerns. If they're in one of the 8 states, right away we'll nearby. If they're in a non-represented state, I'm generally the one that reaches back to them. And if they have questions of any sort, we get it all. If they have questions or concerns and want to reach out, just go to the website and inquire, and you probably talk.
I want to say thank you to Curt Moore, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you want to know more about title insurance, if you're in the U.S., reach out to Curt. And if you're in one of the states that's not covered yet, reach out to Curt and find out when that coverage is coming into play.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KRATIVINSIHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motivateyou.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral A and the letter U.ca, or his website, motivateyou.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner. and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.